Hi, welcome back to Echoes and Edges, the Broken and Beautiful podcast. The Broken and Beautiful is a collective of healers on the hunt for beauty, meaning, and transformation. I'm Patria, your host for Echoes and Edges and the owner of The Broken and Beautiful, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to do a deep dive, or at the beginning of a deep dive, into a series on spiritual harm and heartache. And Stephanie and Kate are here with me today, and I am really excited for this episode. And the reason that we're going to do 2 episodes with the 3 of us together. And the reason that we're doing this, at least in part, is because all 3 of us have had some form of heartache or harm from church systems, from people within church systems, or we've been harmed by people close to us who have sort of gotten away with things that weren't okay with us ultimately. And we have all had to in some way uniquely restructure our own lives in order to find our way forward with peace in this world. And there's been good and hard things that have come from that. But our purpose in this series on spiritual harm and heartache is really to highlight the fallout and sometimes the collateral damage, meaning it's not really well seen behind the scenes, the cost of these, cruel and sometimes just painful, sometimes not even intentional, but sometimes intentional fallouts from church systems or from people within the church systems. And so we're just here to have a conversation about that. So welcome, Kate and Stephanie. And Stephanie, would you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself, other than you're both members of the Broken and Beautiful Collective, remote collective. Delighted
That's
about
right.
that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us. Really happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Stephanie, and I am the mom of 4 that range from 22 to 15. And I'm a coach, and I've been doing the work in story work for over 5 years. And yeah, I'm a single mom now.
Can you just briefly, if it feels doable, to say what you mean by the work of story work? What does that mean to you?
And what it means to me is offering and receiving care to my stories that I didn't even realize were so important, and why I was showing up in my adult space the way I was. And getting the care around my stories in the form of story work with a coach has allowed so much healing, which then has allowed so much growth and so much coming into my own self and feeling like I'm much more active participant of my life.
What a thing. I was thinking about self-leadership. Like you've really learned how to lead yourself from yourself. Like that's such a good summary. Thank you for sharing some of that. And again, so happy to have you back to the listeners. You'll recognize Stephanie from a couple of episodes ago. So, Kate, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us some about yourself.
I am Kate, and I am a trauma certified coach. I work with storywork, and I also work with neurosomatic tools, which is a way of bringing the body's wisdom into the healing process. I am a mom. I have 4 boys who keep me very busy outside of my work, and going through a lot of transitions currently in my life, which has been really highlighting a lot of areas that I am still continuing to heal. I see this process as an ongoing thing I'll be doing for my whole life, But I now feel as if I know myself probably for the first time in my entire life through the work that I've done in the healing realm.
Beautiful. I mean, and just for both of you, I think you already know how I feel about you and your work, but just I'm so honored to have gotten to witness some of that with you, and also to have you here today, really knowing from an inside perspective the cost that it's been for both of you to take up for yourself, to say what you need, to start saying what you want, and to change the system. So I would really call you both legacy changers. And between you, you have 8 children. That's a lot of impact in the world. 5 boys between the two of you.
Yeah, 5 boys.
5 boys between the two of you, and 3 girls. So Stephanie, you've got 3 girls and 1 boy, and Kate, you've got 4 boys. So that's just a lot of impact in the world, and I just don't want to gloss over that. I mean, this is a big reason why we do what we do when it's hard as moms, right?
Thank you for saying that, because definitely our children, I think, fuel the work.
Yeah, it makes us keep going when it feels impossible, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see their faces in front of us, and we have hope for them to be able to lead themselves and to not become part of a, more collateral damage of a system or a way of being that's not good for any of us. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
I had this idea of not letting them become cogs in a destructive system.
Exactly. Amen. Amen.
Yes.
No more cogs. No more cogs. I mean, if people want to be cogs, that's their business. But
Right.
we're going to give our kids the best chance that we can, right?
They have choices.
They have choices.
Yeah,
That's
choices.
right. That's right. They have choices. They can decide. So my coach has been working with me lately because, I believe in coaching, so I have a coach too. And my coach has been working with me on the difference between choice and decision. And I'm still learning a little bit about that. So to be continued as I learn more. All right, so let's dive into our content for today. And, I think I just want to say a little bit more about this, that spiritual harm doesn't always begin with harm, right? It doesn't always begin with abuse or something that's easy to see or tangible or an obvious betrayal. It oftentimes starts with a feeling of not being okay, kind of like a low-grade fever, but you don't know why, and so this is kind of where we want to start this 3-part series, and crescendo up to the toxic side of things, the abusive side of things. But we can't really start there and give a full picture of what the experience is like, right? So sometimes it starts more with that low-grade fever type. Something's not right, but I don't know what it is. And for whatever reason, we're in survival mode. I think of your 2 stories and my story. And the early days of having kids are just so saturated with surviving, and just doing life, changing affording diapers, affording food, let alone cooking it and making sure everybody has what they need, and nightly baths and all the things. And so it's these low-grade things are just under the surface and can really keep us from feeling okay. And oftentimes it starts with a longing, like I'm longing for something more, but I don't like there's something wrong with me. Right. So that's usually the first indicator, at least in my experience. So I'm going to pause right there and see if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I'm thinking in terms of just the very early days. So I'm a very young child, having been born basically into a religious community. And I remember even thinking as a young child how I had people figured out. Like there was not a series of depth or a sense of depth to any of the individuals that I was in contact with regularly. Everything seemed very superficial. And to me, that felt empty. It felt like I wasn't seeing a whole person in many cases across all of these relationships that I had.
How did you experience that as a child? Like, because that's like an adult, that's story work. You've done some story work to put that together, right? So how does a kid experience that? What is that like?
It almost was a sense of feeling smarter than adults in the room.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is unsettling as a child, because these bigger humans should have more power, should feel like stronger and more wise and put together. And as a child, it was very confusing to me, thinking, do I know more than these adults? Do I have something figured out that they don't? It gave us a sense of fear also.
Certainly lack of containment, it sounds like.
Yes.
No, there's not somebody bigger than you. There's not somebody smarter than you. There's not somebody to figure out problems beyond what I can figure out. And so that left you, it sounds like, and as you know, because you're of your Enneagram type, you maybe didn't feel the fear, but that's the word that comes up in my mind, is that didn't feel safe as you're describing that.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have been able to describe fear at all. But it was definitely confusion as to why a child felt smarter. I will say it in kids' words. Why am I smarter than a grown-up?
That's so well said. I have heard other, and where I'm not trying to avoid saying your Enneagram type, but we haven't really talked about whether. Okay, that's the story I hear from eights a lot, is that there's a sense of like, what is this is BS. That's from early. As an Enneagram 9, I had none of that. None, not even a single whiff of something is wrong with the people around me. And it was all up to me. Any thoughts for you, Stephanie? I don't know if you want to say your Enneagram type, because you're working on that a little bit right now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel pretty confident in that I am an Enneagram 4. It makes a lot of pieces fit together. My early childhood, I was also born straight into a religious family. I don't ever remember not being in church. But my earliest feelings of being in my religious community and home is just gripped with fear, because there was so much conversation about end times and hell, but way more about end times and all that going to happen. And so I just remember being panicked on a regular basis. Am I on the right side? Am I going to go to heaven, or did I do it wrong? And so, just constantly trying to pray whatever prayer with whomever, but not feeling any peace on the inside after saying those prayers. So just constantly worried that I'm not getting it right.
It's so terrifying. I'll share just a little bit too. My background is different, but we were very focused on end times as well. Daniel and Revelation were kind of picked apart, and then certain scripture from Daniel and Revelation were used to then create an entire end times eschatology or theology of end times. And it's different than like pre-tribulational rapture fear, but it was its own fear. And there are some kids that come from my background who would go to camp, for instance, and they would play end times. That was part of the camp experience, was they would play end times. And if you wanted extra points, you could actually eat live bugs to prove that you could survive the end times. Right? Should they come. So it was almost like masochism. Like we were just taught masochism. Like, exactly. Hardcore. How hardcore, how tough. And by the way, this is an interesting aside too. And speaking of harm, because these are the waters, right? These are just the waters that we're born and grow up in. We don't know any different. But for us, it was all the Sunday keepers, all the people that kept Sunday or went to church on Sunday that would chase after us. So we were the chosen of all the chosen.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is a little bit of a, like it's different than the two of you, but it's also the same, right? It
Yes.
creates a problem that can't be solved. And so, to some degree or another, we were all aware of that. I wasn't consciously aware of that in that way. I had other problems that I understand now are linked, but at the time I didn't understand that.
And what I hear you saying is you were growing up in the system that was doing it right, which I identify with. Also, there was portions of, we were the only ones doing it the right way. Everyone else was deceived in some way. They didn't have the full truth. They might be a type of a Christian or a believer, but they did not have the full truth. And that feels very familiar. And I know, like, my background is very different from yours, but that sense of being in the right was a very common theme.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stephanie. I see you thinking.
Well, I just wanted to bring in a little context from my story, and that is that from birth to 11, I was raised in a charismatic church. And so it was all the, super emotional worship experience, some people getting words from the Lord, Holy Spirit telling people what to do and all that. And then my parents do a complete swing to the other side. And then we went Reformed Presbyterian from the time that I was 11 on. And that was almost no Holy Spirit activity.
Right, because that's a
rules.
cessationist view, right? So you went from charismatic to cessationist?
I actually don't know that word.
So cessationist means that the gifts of the Spirit are no longer active post-Christ.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes, not in the same.
Okay.
Yes. And there was just, everything was like how we showed up and expressed our religious faith everything was completely different from the day we switched over, which brought a lot of confusion to me. But when we switched over, it was very much, we are doing it the right way, like Kate is saying, that we are the special ones who have the special knowledge, and we are keeping things much stricter and holier than everybody else who are still Christians, but not as good at Christians as us.
That's right. That's right. It's and then the grace movement that kind of came in my experience, because I've been through so many different versions too of Christianity. Then grace kind of came in and said, well, everybody else has been cherry picking the law and deciding what's right. And so now the kind of community church, or the, more free flowing evolution of, at least the way that I experienced it, was we don't need to get it right, but the implication was this is the right way now. And so there's always this right thing. And as people who really have integrity, like there is a desire. Now, I don't know about integrity in terms of integrated, but in terms of wanting to be honorable, wanting to be good, wanting to follow the rules. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I was not I had rebellious ways, I suppose, a little bit, but not much. I mean, I really wasn't much of a rebel. You guys either?
No.
Yeah.
Not even as my, if anyone's familiar with Enneagram, the 8 is the challenger. Like, they typically tend towards rebelling, but there was so much spiritual weight that was taught to me. I didn't even think that I could.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad you said that, because that's such a highlight of the difference between males and females in these systems. Oftentimes like, you didn't have the luxury. And I often use that phrase when I'm trying to explain my experiences. I didn't have the luxury to rebel. That wasn't in my cards, whether it was explicitly true or not. My body had a sense that I would not be safe, welcome, loved. I wouldn't belong. I wouldn't have anything that I needed if I did not be a good girl. And so that's just kind of baked in, so people that are more rebellious, kids that are more rebellious by nature, like, you had to do something with that energy. And that's a lot of what we do in story work, is how do we shift that energy out from its natural outflow, and how do we start giving it room? Okay, let's let this set up the context. And if there's other things that you want to say and bring in, please do. Like, well, let's just make this a really good conversation where we can tie these things in that we've just talked about too. But, so here's the context for all three of us in different ways: is we want to be good, but something's not right, and we've had to exile or cut off parts of ourselves, significant parts of ourselves, in order to be good, to have a sense of community, to kind of get what we need, really, essentially. So what then would you say you believed, but this is a strong way to say this, but what did you understand? Let's ask it this way. What did you understand spiritual community would give you? What did we understand? And where did that idea come from? So this is what's expected of you. What did you understand you would get from that?
Well, I mean, the big one, of course, is eternal security.
Totally.
Which is obviously huge. But certainly as a child, that seemed beyond grasping. That was super big. But so community, like security in having a community and being loved and knowing how to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm. There's the spiritual category and there's the psychological category, right? And from a spiritual perspective, it's eternal salvation. Like, I will get to go to heaven one day and be happy forever. And from a psychological perspective, it's I get to stay with my parents, though.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're hitting one of our core needs, our core need for attachment.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Secure attachment. And we were not explicitly, but definitely implicitly under the radar all the time, communicated with that you will get a sense of belonging if you abide by the rules of these communities, you check the boxes, you show up like you're told. And then that belonging, because we're all trying to be right and good, that belonging will lead to what, Stephanie was saying with the eternal security.
What else was what was the sort of unspoken transaction? You be good, you do these things. For me, it was keep Sabbath, the Friday night to Saturday night Sabbath, the Jewish way. Then X, or Y. What was it for you? What else besides eternal salvation? Because I didn't get that. That wasn't part of my offer.
Right. Yours wouldn't be eternal security.
No.
There was a sense of pride in doing it the right way. So that was almost a reward in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And I will say, as a woman showing up in these spaces, being a specific type of woman. So specifically in the tradition I was raised in, women were not allowed to speak. We had to cover our heads in the worship services. Some people covered their heads all the time. So they took it to even another level, and both could be explained as being right and good. So there was confusion there as well. And there was a lot of, there was a very distinct difference between men and women, and roles were very clearly differentiated and defined for both.
Can you like give us an example if you have one of that?
Yeah. So after a certain age of children in Sunday school, a woman could no longer teach them. So a woman could teach younger boys and children, but because once they got to about 12 or 13, then a man would have to take over teaching that age of kids because it was mixed Sunday school groups. It was girls and boys together. So there was no opportunity for a woman to share wisdom once children had reached the age of 12 or 13.
Sorry, I'm just sort of shocked, even though I'm not, but it's shocking. It's just shocking that the age 12, 13, I remember hearing it called the age of accountability, right? So that's where supposedly, I think it had to do with Jesus saying no to his mother. Or leaving and going to the temple and talking to the Pharisees or
able to make adult choices, and so now the boy has now surpassed the grown woman.
The woman.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Could I just ask a question about the head covering? Could you give a greater explanation on why a head covering might have been worn?
Yes. So it goes back to the specific, I can't remember the book of the Bible, but the specific verse about women should worship with their heads covered. It's a very specific phrase. And knowing what I know now about biblical culture, I understand it completely differently, but then it was a rule for women. What I've come to understand and know now is that in the culture, the only women who did not have their heads covered at that time were prostitutes, sex workers, and they had to have their hair uncovered to indicate their status. And so when they were showing up to worship, their people were coming against the women, and we were trying to make equality happen for all of the people in the worship settings in biblical times. And so they encouraged all women, regardless of their cultural status, when they came to worship, everyone to cover their heads together to show equality and between the classes.
So it was a way, scripturally, biblically, in that era where Jesus was ushering in a new way of being. He was this idea was actually elevating all women instead of making women smaller.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was very culturally dependent. We do not cover our heads typically in our cultures in the West these days.
Right.
So, yeah.
In fact, we do a lot with our hair,
Yes,
don't we?
do. So much.
Yeah. I can't identify so much with the feeling of pride, but I can identify with the feeling of belonging. I just never didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like I belonged. I'll say that in the positive sense, because I really was told what to do and I did it, and I didn't stray. I mean, even I was a teenager in 8th grade when Top Gun came out. So, Tom Cruise and the first time around. And he was a little bit known, but that, of course, is what put him on the map. And I remember just feeling this sense of, it's not pride, but it's something of, like, I wanted to join in with the other kids who were like losing their minds over that, but I couldn't. I could not let myself experience the childishness of that. I couldn't be a kid, So I remember having a feeling of like cynicism. This is ridiculous, or kind of irritation at the other kids, and just being very dignified. And that I would say is kind of how that played out for me.
So I am just thinking about how my parents, like, we had the church piece of it, but then also my parents joining the IBLP and Bill Gothard movement. That brought a lot of regulation and what right and wrong look like into my life.
And just to clarify, by regulation, you mean control.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not neurobiologically regulation. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So around the time that I was 8 is when my parents joined this. So my parents were never normal people. We were never normal, but I seemed a little bit more like everybody else until the time I was 8. And then because of our doing it the righter, religious way, like I could no longer wear pants. I had to wear long skirts. And ideally, it would be like navy, khaki, or jean skirts would be what would be specific. And modest tops, because you did not want your body to be alluring and catching the men's eyes. And, preferably your hair is long. Like I had to ask my dad permission every time I wanted to get a haircut. My dad told me at 8 that if I did not follow the rules that he was setting for me for what I wore, I would have to buy my own clothes. And
at 8 years
at
old.
8, yes. And I knew I didn't have a job or any access to money. So I had to make a rather adult decision in that moment of, okay, I don't like this at all because now I'm going to be really weird with everyone else. But there's no way I can clothe myself and supply whatever else responsible things that not following the rules would cause. Okay. So I had to be like, okay. And I did rebel once. Like what's funny is me, not the 8. I did more rebelling than Kate.
Yes, that's very 4-like, actually, Stephanie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did wear the above the knee jean skirt that a friend had given me, and I put it on and wore it to church before my parents could see what I had on, and then it was absolutely never again. So that was it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. 2 things. First of all, the reason 4s rebel is to be authentic. The reason 8s rebel is to challenge the system. So it is different reasons, right? But okay. Secondly, I'm hearing both of you talk a lot about your own self, your own being, your physical being, and how it was controlled. And so just quickly tell us, and this is an aside, we're way off topic here. It's so important though. But what did the guys have to do? What was the different? Like what changed for the men or the boys?
Nothing.
Yeah. So it's all about controlling the women.
Yes.
And specifically controlling your passionate desires, or like what was being controlled? I mean, like if now looking back, what would you say it is?
Yes, yeah. I would say femininity is dangerous in its authentic, powerful way. That would be my, decades past looking back at this. And the women were required to be very generic, very small, and serve.
But I would also add to that there is a certain element of we needed to have a certain look. Like it's not just plain and small. It's also sweet and very virgin appearance. Like we needed to have rosy cheeks and sparkling eyes and wavy hair, curled hair. And so there's this very much keep sweet, be pretty and innocent and plain, all mixed into one.
How did you have to participate in your own disillusionment, essentially? Because at some point you started saying no to this system, right? You started saying, don't know, maybe it wasn't initially a no, like we talked about initially today. It was a longing. It was a sense of something's not right. It was exhaustion. But so especially at that juncture, how did you survive? I think that's about like, what did you do then when you started feeling something was off or wrong? What happened then?
For me, the biggest piece, I mean, when our survival is threatened, we go into the 4 Fs or the 5 Fs, wherever you want to look at them. And I think for women, especially in high controlling religions, the fawn is your only response. You're not allowed to freeze and stop. Mm-hmm. You are not allowed to fight, for sure. Mm-hmm. You can't flop. You can't. Many women do. They reach a point where they have to they cannot go on, and it's the flop. But the fawn, the appeasement, we call it people pleasing. It becomes a wired response to all of this threat that's around us all the time. We don't quite know when we're getting it wrong. And so we people please, we acquiesce, we stay silent when we want to speak. We do more, we serve more. When I learned about the fawn response as a trauma response, my whole life made sense. I realized how I survived, why I survived, and why I was so good at it. I got really, really good at it.
I think I 100% agree with everything Kate just said. That is absolutely true. I think I learned how to gaslight myself hardcore. It gave me some control, a feeling of some sort of control, and yeah, I just remember feeling angry and upset about how something would go and then leave the situation because I was so wrong and I couldn't say what I wanted to say and then just mentally think, how do I shift? How do I kill what I believe and get over here?
Oof. I mean, it is gaslighting, Sal's. I totally hear what you're saying, but you just said the word kill myself. Like I had to kill off something of myself, it is technically, I totally see that. And it's just so diabolic because of the reasons, and it's all unconscious, right? So we're talking about, these are all things we've learned to put words to that were just flowing within our systems. And we were reacting and responding and reacting and responding. And so what I hear you saying is that participation involved fawning, which is a trauma response that has to do with appeasing the aggressor. If we think about animals, when in a fawn, they're on their back cowering, right? Dogs put legs up because they want to show that they're submissive. So fawning is another way to say submissive, right? Mm-hmm. So yes. We had to be submissive. We had to not be stronger, not be smarter. I mean, that was what you aren't, right? That's what you couldn't be. So you had to. You had you had to lie to yourself. You had to gaslight yourself into being in the wrong. That's right. So if you're feeling angry at what's happening to you, it's because you're in the wrong.
Right. And then that brings up the guilt.
Exactly.
Oh,
okay.
absolutely.
Tell us more. Talk about that more. Mm-hmm.
The constant feeling like I am wrong. I'm doing something wrong. I'm being something wrong. Somebody is mad. It must be my fault. There's that responsibility for everyone else and their emotions and their well-being above my own. And there's still this, with all of the work, with all of the hard things that I've done and walked through, my primary response to a tough situation is, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. I'm in trouble. It's like the little kid version. I'm in trouble.
And with that goes the racing thoughts. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm in trouble, and you're playing out any way that you possibly could have messed something up before you've even had a conversation with somebody.
And I just want to say, I want to capture what you guys are saying right here. So there's the I'm in trouble, the anxiety that comes with being in trouble. And then there's the response, there's the reaction to that, right? So then you're going to try to get out of trouble. You're going to fix it. So it's up to you to fix it. And this is not a unique experience only to women always. However, this is far more prevalent among women than it is among men, especially in these systems. Men don't have this concept within their brain that it's up to them, because it's not. It's up to the women. At the same time, you're being told you can't have it be up to you. You're not smart enough to impact growing boys.
Sounds like an impossible bind.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
So, okay. So what are the losses? What are those losses that we're still trying to name? Talk to us about that. Try to begin talking to us about that, because that I felt the overwhelming, and I know that's a big question.
I mean, myself. At its core, you lose who you are. You lose who you were created to be, who you are meant to show up in the world as. When I said, I finally know who I am, I'm finally showing up as me, I mean it. There were so many parts of me strewn through my history that having to walk back and find those pieces that I had to lay down, or as Stephanie said, kill off. I mean, it's taken 6 years to get enough to feel like a real person again.
Yeah. Enough of you back home.
Yeah.
And it just feels like utter self-abandonment.
Yes.
And to lean into any of my own desires, opinions was so bad that, yeah, it was dangerous to be me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lose. I know that if I show up as me, even though I did not have this in such conscious language, but if I show up as me, I lose all community. I lose the little bit of love I feel like I have. I lose provision for food and clothing. I lose knowing who I am, because this community tells you you're a woman, you look this way, you show up this way, and you do these things. You bear children, you raise the children, and you serve and honor and obey your husband and the church.
And part of what I hear you really splitting, like threading the needle with right there, Stephanie, is that it's not that you didn't want to be a mom and a wife, right? But it's the difference between what you want and what's mandated for you, and the burden that you have to bear in order to be good, like to be sweet, to like you'd have no voice. You have to leave yourself to do this thing. And self-abandonment, Kate, you said something at the retreat that has really stuck with me this week, which I feel like is such a good point to bring up right here, is that self-abandonment is covert self-harm. That is exactly right. And so we were taught to covertly self-harm. As long as we were being sweet, nobody, we could be doing what we wanted on the inside to ourselves. In fact, we were expected to. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's how, when we talk about abuse, Often survivors of abusive relationships or abusive families will say, I wish I had just been hit, because if you've experienced both forms of abuse, these psychological or mental or emotional wounds that were performed on us, but then we had to almost take and begin and continue to do on ourselves. It's that sense of harm, that sense of self-harm. It really, there are no scars, but our souls are bruised.
Yes. And there's something wrong with us that now we are doing to ourselves. So there is really actually something wrong with us. And that is a terrible bind. That is a terrible bind. In fact, it's like the third bind, like there's the bind to the bind to the bind, and maybe more than that. But I want to just let's sum up this, because we're moving into the toxicity and abuse that comes from harmful systems. Let's sum up this first part one. We'll do an ending, and then we'll dive into the part two. So as we sum up, you can hear, listeners, that we're moving toward the actual toxic and abusive elements of these harmful systems and people within the systems, and ways that we had to agree with the harm. Like this is what we're trying to undo, right? Is to get back to ourselves and to be free from that, to have the binds broken. Kate and Stephanie, is there anything you'd want to add as we just summarize this part one before we move into part two?
I have, as you were kind of wrapping up with those words, I think it's important to realize that you cannot experience the heartache until you have named the harm. I think only in the naming and the realizing of what reality you have experienced can the grief come in a way that brings wholeness and healing. There is obviously grief within the system when you are in it and stuck, but the heartache is much more poignant as you name the harm that you've experienced.
Yeah. And I just want to add here that grief, because we use these words so much in our line of work and in the story work world and the Allender world, grief, what we're talking about here is not like sadness or tears necessarily, because everybody has sadness and tears, even when you are abandoning yourself, you're still sad sometimes and you still have grief sometimes. What we're talking about right here is an exponential outpouring. Like the image I have is like a debridement of a deep heart wound, that where all the, like it's been sealed over with a little scab, and when you start taking the scab off, there's all this pus that comes out and bleeds and aches, and it's messy and it stinks and it's old and it's been there forever, and to really like smell the smell of grief, what has been stuck for so long, to me that is more a realistic picture of what we're talking about, is letting these ways that we've had to agree, that we've had to compromise things that are not ways that we want to be in order to survive in a system that's not good for us or anybody. And that's why we're here today. So I just wanted to add that grief is not simply being sad. That's not what we're talking about here.
No, I mean, you feel it to your bones and all the way through, from your head down to your feet, when you know what it has actually cost you. But like Kate was saying, till the harm is named, till I can find who I actually am and not who I've had to be, I can't even access that grief of the loss and the betrayal of myself for all these years.
Well said. Until we can get to the grief, we can't get to the person.